guys, I'm John, I'm the Geeky Fanboy, and today we're doing something a bit different because ever since the newest episode of Mr. Robot, theories and I don't know which other things have been going around in the fandom, on the internet, everywhere. And I thought, why not catch up on some theories that are out there? I give you my thoughts on some of them, and maybe we can, but probably not, come down to what this new thing is that came up in the second episode of season 4. Which leads me straight to a spoiler warning, but I guess that's obvious from the title. If you're not fully caught up with season 4 of Mr. Robot, do not watch this video, do not continue watching. There will be theories, there will be spoilers, there will be everything. Okay, so in the second episode of season 4, at the end, it's revealed that there might be another personality in Elliot's head, because we see some sort of vision, dream inside his head, where it's him as a child talking to his mother, and the child asks, "Are we waiting for Elliot?" The mother says no. Then the kid asks, "Are we waiting for Mr. Robot?" The mother says no, and then she says, "We're waiting for the other one." And also Darlene has said to Elliot that she told him about Vera coming back, but neither Elliot nor Mr. Robot remember Darlene telling him that. So yeah, now there is the possibility of another personality being in the room, and ever since this has been revealed, so to speak, there have been many theories as to who this new personality might be, so let's dive into some of these theories. So I did a lot of looking around on Tumblr to see what other people were thinking, and I came across some of the most popular theories, at least from what I could gather in the fandom, and I thought I'm gonna give you some of my thoughts on what I think might be true, what might not be true, and yeah, let's just discuss this and have some fun, so let's go. So a rather popular and one of the first theories that came out was that it might be Sam Esmail, because we saw Sam Esmail at the end of episode 1. He was the one guy who gave Elliot the overdose, so Elliot dies, and he's the one who says, "Goodbye, friend." And a couple of people have mentioned in my review of the previous episode that Sam Esmail has turned up in multiple episodes across the show. Like we see him when they're down in a tube station, like Elliot and Mr. Robot talking to each other. We sometimes see him just popping up in the background or in the mirror when Elliot looks into the mirror. So this seems to be a popular theory, one which I could see happening, and because it's something Sam Esmail might come up with. Like it just kind of makes sense in Sam Esmail's mind. But there's something I came across on Tumblr. The thing is, there was no source given, so I don't know if this is true. But it talked about the cameo Sam Esmail always has on the show. "I remember thinking, what a critical line, 'Goodbye, friend.' I felt weird to give it to somebody I was going to just cast for that one scene. I always try to find a way to slip my cameo in every season, so this just felt right. But I have to tell you, when we were shooting it, I started to get very worried. I had 2 words to say, 1 line. I think I did 30 takes. Rami was directing me. I was terrible, I'm not ashamed to admit it. I blinked a lot, which apparently is a big no-no when it comes to acting. All of this I learned from Rami. Rami Malek, by the way, great filmer, great director. Gave me all notes and he held my hand through it." So like I said, there was no source given, so I don't know if this is true. I mean, it sounds genuine. But when I read this, I thought, oh, so Sam Esmail just has a random cameo in every season of the show. Because if this is just a random cameo he has in every season, then we're probably not gonna see him again in season 4. Which leads me to think, okay, so he's probably not going to be the third personality, because he's not going to show up again. Also, not saying this is a bad thing necessarily, but you know, some people might be like to think that Sam Esmail is might be a bit full of himself if he makes himself into this third personality. Like, you know, I could see some people in the end thinking, okay, this is a bit too much. Like, nice idea, but a bit too much. And it might be interesting, and maybe they're gonna address his character he played in in that episode because I also read that in another comment on my previous review video. Like someone was wondering why did they pick up Sam Esmail's character, because we see two people dragging Elliot out of that building, and then Price picks up a random third person who gives Elliot the overdose. Like, why pick up that guy who's Sam Esmail? Which is a good point. And you know, with all the cameos, you might be led to think, oh, okay, so Sam Esmail is the third personality. But then again, they might just be cameos, like for fun, because Sam Esmail makes the show, and you know, it's this meta narrative, fourth wall breaking he likes. So it's him saying goodbye, friend, and that's it. Like, it's just a little fun Easter egg for us viewers. So I don't know. It will be interesting to see if they're addressing him being that character in this season, but I wouldn't necessarily subscribe to the idea that it's Sam Esmail who's the third personality. Okay, let's move on to another theory, which is also a rather obvious theory if you think about it, and I kind of like this post I'm going to read to you right now because I like the sentiment behind it. The issue with the third altar and everyone trying to figure it out, honestly, I think it's not going to be a super complicated thing. I personally feel like it's going to actually be really simple. I know that there are all kinds of theories floating around, some more absurd than others, and all are valid. However, I think it's super simple. And now, the addition to this, I may or may not be wrong, but really, I think the third altar is friend. So yeah, first off, that's what I kind of like the sentiment. It's probably not going to be too complicated, like we're making up all these theories, and very often it turns out to be something that's rather obvious. Because that's always the thing with Mr. Robot. When you think about the twists, they are rather obvious. Once you know and then think back as to what has happened, you realize, oh, it's actually quite obvious. And this add-on, this last line, I think the third altar is friend, is what leads me to the next theory, that we, the viewer, the audience, we are the third altar. The one Elliot has been, and Mr. Robot now, has been talking to all this time. And a couple of people seem to like that theory, so here's another post I liked. I'm freaking out, confused, terrified over the ending of tonight's episode. Not exactly uncommon for this show, and I think I know who Elliot's third personality is. It's us, his friend. Makes sense since we learn things along with Elliot. He asks us for help, gets mad at us for not telling him things, etc. Take for example Elliot kissing Darlene in season 1. We nor Elliot knew she was his sister, so we probably did what felt natural in a moment like that. Also, Mr. Robot has been talking to us lately, so there's that. I'm not sure if I'm into this theory, but it would definitely be one that seems very logical to me. Like, if that were revealed, I would be like, okay, yeah, that's a cool idea, and it sort of makes sense. Since we, as the audience, mostly follow Elliot and Mr. Robot, we also see things he doesn't. And it would make sense that sometimes we're told things, like not directly told, but we see them, we know of them, and we're not able to tell Elliot, which is why he doesn't know about them. Like, we as the audience see Darlene meeting Vera at the end of season 3. We know that. We know he's back. But we can't tell Elliot. Like, we're inside his head, but we never talk back, like Elliot says. We don't talk back. So I kind of like the idea that we might be the third personality, that he is aware of us, or that he thinks he has made us up, but we've actually been there for quite some time, and we know about things he doesn't know about. Like, I like that, because it also ties into this whole meta-narrative, fourth wall breaking thing Sam Esmail likes to do with this show, and it would be another brilliant and smart way to include the audience into the viewing experience with along with Elliot and Mr. Robot. We kind of have more of a connection, and also partly unknowing connection to Elliot or Mr. Robot. So I'm a big fan of this theory. It would, like I said, it would be a bit simple, would be a bit obvious, but then it doesn't really hurt anyone, and it would be very smart. And I can see a lot of viewers, including me, going, "Oh no, what? Me? No, what?" Like, having a lot of reactions if this turns out to be a twist. So Ask the Friend being the third altar would definitely be very interesting. Okay, so the next theory has something to do with something I mentioned in my review of said episode, because I brought back the idea that I might have to do something with Tyrell, because back in season 2, I think, I also had this theory. Okay, Tyrell is now another personality of Elliot when they're like facing off, like with Tyrell having the gun and everything. Just like Elliot, I thought Tyrell's not real. He's inside his head. He's an alter, and and then I thought, okay, he's real because he talks to Angela on the phone and all that, and now we see him being hailed as this great guy who stopped the hack and everything. So I thought, okay, so it's probably not Tyrell, but then who knows? It might still be Tyrell, so I'm holding on to that. I don't truly think it is going to be him. Though it would be kind of interesting if because it's an old theory of mine. But there seems to be this popular theory that the third alter is in some way, at least, connected to Tyrell. Like a lot of people look back at some of the conversations Elliot has had with Tyrell, also in some other moments, because in some scenes Elliot seems very, very cold and calculating, and some people have argued that this doesn't seem really in character with what we know Elliot to be like normally, and this side comes through most of the times when he is in contact with Tyrell. And there has been one scene that has been quoted a lot for as an example. I'm gonna read the post to you for this. The third alter was the one who told Tyrell he's not seeing what's above him, and he also has a god complex and lacks empathy, yet he still feels a connection to Tyrell, and that's why the Red Wheelbarrow poem means so much to him. So this seems to be quite popular, like especially this scene with the god complex and you don't see what's above you and all that. Like this seems to be the one scene where people think, oh, we've actually already seen the third alter. We already know what he's like, right? Like we've seen it in a couple of scenes when he's this cold and calculating. And also people have argued that this might be the third personality because there is a scene, I think it's in the third season or something, when Mr. Robot confronts Tyrell, and Tyrell cites this back to him. Like he quotes him, "You wanted us to be gods," and Mr. Robot says, "What the fuck are you talking about?" So like, apparently even Mr. Robot seems like he can't remember this, like because he would know, or Elliot would know. So there is this argument that okay, we have already seen this this third personality, we just haven't been fully aware that it was a third personality, and this third personality seems to feel some sort of connection with Tyrell, who is also this sort of cold and calculated, sometimes violent character. I found a bit of a longer post. I'm gonna read the highlights to you, but it kind of explains nicely this connection the third alter might have to Tyrell, so here it is. Many people pointed out that the third alter could be the superior Elliot, which means he was the one who appears cold and lacks emotion in certain scenes, and he just seems off. We often saw him acting strange, yet despite the theories, we didn't have clear evidence that there could be a third alter until now. So then again, it cites a scene with you're not seeing what's above you. Tyrell recites the Red Wheelbarrow poem must have significance since he remembers it and writes about it in his journal, and the third personality seems to lack empathy and emotions, yet he still cares about Tyrell to remember the poem. So what if the third alter is attracted to, or at least fascinated by Tyrell's god/superior complex, and what if Elliot's third alter is the one who's attracted to Tyrell and not the others? Would certainly be very interesting also for, shippers. But, we have seen this sort of fascination Elliot seems to have to a certain degree with Tyrell, where you're wondering why is he still keeping him around? Why does he have a soft spot for him? Because he knows what an awful person Tyrell can be and what Tyrell has done to him. But they still seem to care for each other and have a connection with one another for some reason, and it would also explain why Tyrell feels so much for Elliot, why he thinks he's the only one who understands him, because Elliot also partly has this colder, more calculating and emotionless side to him that Tyrell might feel also attracted to a certain degree. Like the post said, because they seem to be very similar in that sense, so it makes sense that the third personality sees himself close to Tyrell, and maybe that's how they've built that bond. Then they cite one of the dream sequences. Remember when we saw Tyrell holding a key in Elliot's dream? What if that's the key to unlock or bring out that side of Elliot? I mean, Tyrell definitely has a place in Elliot's subconscious. Maybe that explains the repressed feelings. Another instance where Tyrell and the third alter could be interacting is after the hack in season 1, when Elliot wakes up in Tyrell's car. He goes missing for 3 days and doesn't remember any of it, was wondering what they were doing in there. Since it probably isn't Robot, it could be the other alter. Also, when Elliot comes across a farmhouse at the end of season 3, he stares at it for a while if he recognizes it. The farmhouse could be the house where Tyrell was taken to by the Dark Army after the hack. Maybe that's when the third alter was in charge and Elliot has been there but can't figure it out. So yeah, I definitely like this idea that there is a third alter who's in some way connected to Tyrell. I don't think, like I said, I don't think it's gonna be Tyrell himself, but I kind of like this idea that we have already seen this third alter, but we haven't been fully aware of the fact that this is another alter. So that would definitely be a very good twist, because then again we could have these sort of flashbacks and we think back and we realize, oh, we've actually already seen this. Oh yeah, it makes sense. So that's definitely a very interesting theory. Okay, so and another theory, one I quite like a lot as well, is more about the fact how many alters there actually are, because there has been this theory, I think it's been around for a while, not just since this season, that there are already more than just 2 alters. Like there's not just Elliot and Mr. Robot, there are more than the 2 of them. What I like is the idea that the Elliot we usually see, you know, like the Elliot in the hoodie played by Rami Malek and everything, is only the host but not the core personality. So the host is usually the personality that inhabits the body most of the time and does the day-to-day stuff and all that, but the core personality is the person who was originally there when the trauma happened and the split happened and all that. So there has been this idea that we haven't seen the core personality yet, or like the original Elliot. So who knows? Maybe the Elliot we know, played by Rami Malek, is just another personality who's like very good at hacking and all that, and has the social anxiety and the depression and all that. But you know, he manages day-to-day life, but he is only the host. He's not the core. I would love that. That would be such a good idea. There have been a couple of theories as to who the other alters could be, like something that, for example, Kid Elliot, the little child, and his mother are already another alter we've seen, like this core calculating side and all that. Like that, there might be like 4, 5, 6 personalities already we are only partly aware of, and that would make sense. Like I've said in my previous review, people with DID don't just have 2 alters; they usually have a lot more alters. Like it's typical for people with DID to have at least 5, 6, 7, and even more people. So I wouldn't be surprised if it now turns out, oh, Elliot isn't actually Elliot, he's only the host but not the core, and there have been 2, 3 more other personalities, though I don't think they're gonna do it that way. They're probably gonna do it like he has a third, maybe even a 4th personality, but I don't think they're gonna go up into like the 10s or the 20s. Like it would realistically work, but I don't think they would do that because it just takes a bit too much work now to do this in the last season. But it would certainly be a very interesting twist if it turns out the Elliot we know isn't actually the true Elliot, so to speak. So there have been a couple of ideas as to who this either third alter or the core personality, who that could be. For example, here is one. This other one has to be the one talking to Elliot at the movies when he was a kid. Maybe the first alter from pre-Alderson trauma. Pretty sure it's the one who pushed him out the window. Like, it would make sense that in his childhood that Elliot would have had this trauma and then split for the first time, but maybe he didn't know it. So, like, who knows, maybe in some of these flashbacks when we see child Elliot, this is core personality Elliot, or we're already seeing some other alter. Like, we don't know. DID is complicated, this show is complicated, we don't know what's going on. I also found another post on Tumblr which I thought was quite interesting, which talks a bit about how Elliot and Mr. Rob behave differently, especially in season 4 now, and it kind of talks about these differences we've seen in how Elliot reacts to certain things, if there might be a core personality we haven't seen or a third alter. So I thought it was quite interesting, so I'm going to read that to you real quick. On how different Elliot and Mr. Robot have been acting since teaming up. The way Elliot acts and holds himself reminds me almost exactly of his moody kid self the day Edward collapsed in the theatre. Mr. Robot, meanwhile, is weirdly calm. I kind of felt like the Elliot we're used to seeing, Rami, is now the one who appears as Mr. Robot, for example, Edward, Mr. Robot talking to us. And the Elliot we're seeing in episode two of season 4 is more like the kid state. So maybe the one he, as a kid, was hushing in the theatre flashback was talking to the actual Elliot that we maybe haven't seen yet. So the core personality, I guess. And that moody kid style was already a split state, one he reverts to whenever he faces grief. For example, Mr. Robot being sick or dying, or when Angela died. Also a thought on actual Elliot / his third alter. The final scene in the premiere of season 1 where Elliot meets Tyrell, back when he was just a tech, suddenly in a room with Tyrell and the 1% of the 1%, maybe the Deus group, the room that looks exactly like the final scene in episode 2 of season 4. Wonder if it's where Price will get all of Deus together, or even if time was as it appeared in that scene to begin with. And then a nice little add-on, because I think it's absolutely true. Sam's mind is insane, plus the amount of research he must have done on trauma, dissociation, and DID. It's not easy to watch all this, since unfortunately it works as entertainment, but Sam has managed to portray mental illness in the way that can be heartbreakingly and excruciatingly overwhelming. So yeah, first off, completely agree. Like, the amount of research and the way they portray mental illness, DID, social anxiety and depression is absolutely amazing. And yeah, I like the thoughts that are in this post. Like, we have maybe already seen an alter, that Kid Elliot is another alter, because that was a thought I also had, because, you know, at the end of episode 2 in season 4, we see this table we saw in the beginning of the very, very first episode, and it's 4 chairs, and there's Kid Elliot sitting in one, then we know there's proper Elliot, there's Mr. Robot, and, you know, who's the 4th one? So, you know, maybe Kid Elliot together with his mother are already another alter, we don't know. So I guess we'll have to wait and see what happens. The thing is, I can totally see Sam Esmail not addressing this whatsoever in the next episode, because, you know, there's still, 10 episodes or so left, so, you know, the reveal has to be a bit later down the road, though I think that they wouldn't reveal it at the very end. I think they might reveal it either halfway through the season or 3/4 through the season, so we have some time to get used to this idea of there being a third alter, and that we actually get to see the third alter, like, in action, get to see who plays him, who acts as him, what Elliot, or not Elliot, does. So, I mean, it's in the room now. It would be kind of stupid if they didn't follow through. That would be the worst thing they could do, that there isn't another personality. Because, you know, it's in the room now, and they kind of have to follow through with it. And also, it kind of makes sense. Like I said, it makes sense with the DID condition, and it's a theory I think that has been in the room for quite some time, not just since this week, so to speak. So I am absolutely looking forward to seeing what they do with this. Like I said, my favorite theories probably are that we, the audience, are the third alter. That will be quite interesting. But I also like the idea that Elliot himself is another alter, and that we haven't seen the core personality. I think that might actually be the thing that's going to happen. But, you know, it's Sam Esmail and it's Mr. Robot. This show does all the unexpected things, so I'm pretty sure whatever is going to happen, it's going to be an absolute shocker, that when we're watching, we're going to be like, oh my god, they did not just do that. So I'm looking forward to finding out what they'll do with this. I don't even really care what it's going to be in the end. I just want to have the experience of the reveal, of the twist, and yeah, I'm absolutely looking forward to finding out more about this other one. What are your thoughts on the other one, the third alter? Put something down in the comments below, let's discuss this. I would love to hear some of your theories, or the theories you've read somewhere else and think they are quite interesting. So put them down in the comments below, I'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't done it already. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.